So our next speaker here is going to be speaking about from strategy to actions, 5 steps to phenomenal customer success. It's Tal Tsfany, the Chief Customer Officer of BASE. Please welcome Tal.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me right? So first, who am I? I'm an engineer stumbling on customer success. I started as a software engineer, and slowly, when I joined BASE very early on, I managed everything customer, and then I found that there is a name for that, customer success, which I loved, and here I am 4 years later. So what I'll try to do in this presentation is, the way I thought about it is, what would I say to someone that says, hey, I'm starting in customer success, what did you learn, how can you save me time? And so that's how I built this presentation. It's more kind of this is the other name, which is things I should have known 4 years ago and saved myself a lot of time. So a lot of dumb moments that I thought about it. So it's going to be a little more high level, more strategic, and maybe a little philosophical. But in the end, I'd love to answer any questions. Just to give you an idea of what we're running, we're about 30-something people in customer success at BASE. We're close to 0% net churn. We're trying to get to about 2-3 negative net churn this year, which is what it means to the company. And we've become a very, I would say, disciplined customer success organization. So I'd like to share some of the principles with you. So the 5 steps. The first thing I would do differently than 4 years ago is think. Sit down and think. And I don't think people spend the time to think today. Think not looking at a screen, but sitting in your office. I don't know if you know what is thinking by writing, but I really recommend that, which is trying to figure out what is success, right? Not jumping into all of the other people's metrics and so on and so forth. And by the way, this is why I think conferences like that are a little bit confusing, because the context of your success is so different from your other colleagues. I've been in some of the customer success VP dinners, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the opposite in my world. And I think the one thing that I realized is that you really need to understand what success means. And I'll talk a little bit about what it means at BASE. BASE is a sales productivity platform designed for salespeople. And it took me about 2 years to understand what success means. I thought it's churn. I thought it's NPS, CSAT. It's not. That's not success. And a lot of people say, yeah, make your customers happy and everything will be okay. It's not about happiness. It's about success. What does it mean? Because they can be happy and then leave. But if they're successful, they'll never leave. So trying to figure out what success means is a really hard process. It takes a lot of time, and you'll be amazed what you'll find in the other end of it. And it gets very, very deep. What I recommend to do is to start with definitions. Again, very philosophical process, but to really uncover the true meaning of customer success. I don't know what your product does. In my case, we thought that if salespeople are going to use BASE, then they're going to be successful, and they're not. We heard that, if you do the correlation of adoption and retention, it's not a one-to-one correlation. And why? Because adoption is just an enabler for something else. So it took us a lot of time, and we realized a couple of things that I'll share in a second. So a couple of things while you're doing this process of thinking, and I'll be happy to kind of share if someone wants later on what that process looked like. But it might run deeper than your customer strategy. And I have a theory, which is entrepreneurs start a company with a product in mind. And then a year later or 2 years later, the product meets a customer. And at that point in time, things change. Right now, some CEOs like, oh, wow, this is an opportunity to reinvent or rethink my product. Some of them don't. At this point in time, I think you should rethink your product strategy with customer meets product in mind. And that's exactly what happened in BASE. At one point in time, I was like, guys, let's stop for a second. Everything that we're thinking in the lab, in our R&D and product marketing and product management is not necessarily true. Look at what's happening. I'm talking to customers. This is what they're telling us. And it really went so deep that it kind of reshaped our company strategy. So be ready to lead, not be led. I think that customer success VPs and managers should take part in the customer's strategy definition, because they bring that point in time when customer meets product. And the information is so meaningful, to the point where sometimes you have to pivot your product strategy because of that. Another word of caution: don't go tell internally what your customers have told you. They don't know. They don't think about your product all day long. They think about your product in a very simplified way. It's you that need to take what they're telling you and the wisdom that you bring, thinking about those things 24 hours a day, and redefine. Don't lose the chance to redefine success for your customers. I'll give you an example. My customers will tell you, yeah, I just want everybody to use the system so I know what's going on with my sales pipeline. I would say that's not enough, right? You want to sell more. Don't you want to sell more? And the VP sales goes, yes, of course I want to sell more, but that's not what I expected of base. And then 15 minutes later, after I talk to them about, okay, this is how I think about sales. Here's your sales data. You're leaking money here and here and here. You should distribute your leads differently. You should be managing your pipeline differently. And by the way, if you're selling more than 60 days in average sales cycle, it's done. Don't just throw that opportunity away because there's zero chance you're going to close it. There's like, oh my God, I never expected this from base. So now you're my partner here? What are you, a sales ops as a service? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I am. So redefining success for your customers is a really key thing. Don't just take what they're telling you they want and translate that into, so go deeper than that. I share a little bit about what we've done. Hopefully this will work. So starting with definition, just take what it means. It's the accomplishment of an aim and a purpose. So really understanding what the purpose of the customer is. And what is the purpose? It's the reason why something is done or created, for which something exists. So very philosophical, very deep. I don't know how to translate because I don't know your world, but for us it was, just ignore it for a second, but the process was really understanding what the goal is, right? What is the purpose? And the achievement of it is the attainment of that goal. How do you get there with effort and skill? So that was kind of the key theme in our last customer success kickoff that happened like a month and a half ago. It was the definition of what is the goal, what are we aiming for, what are we bringing as an organization through the effort and the skill that we have to allow our customers to meet that goal. So here's what we came up with, right? Very simple, but very deep. So how do you turn leads into revenue with base in the middle? And the second thing I would say, the second step, so just to summarize, first step, don't start doing before you really figure out what success means to a customer. Don't start running and measuring and chasing churn and chasing NPS. This is like, my metaphor is like most customer success leaders are running after a wagon of the product, and they're trying to save everybody that falls off the wagon and measure lagging indicators of what's going on. I think that's wrong. I think you should be ahead. You should be driving the wagon. Customer success should be driving the things that then you can measure in the back. But so first think about where are you going and try to design it this way. Now, the second step is, once you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, is reverse engineer everything. If I want my customers to sell more, not just adopt base, I need to understand all of the components that are associated with selling more. And that's really hard because it goes beyond your product, way beyond your product. And then your CEO goes like, you want to tell me that now you want to open a consulting arm of how to sell more? I said, yes. But then I explain what it will do for our positioning and the value it's going to bring. And it really takes that very simple association of leads turning into revenue and trying to break it down to the different domains that are associated, the different variables. And they're like, I would say, about 30, 40 different variables that we've identified that we are actually tracking in customer success. It's way beyond what our product team is thinking about. So where are your people? One of the things, just to give you an idea, today at Base, we can track email sentiments. And the reason why we do that, it's because the initial idea from customer success was, guys, if the sales team is not motivated to sell more, Base will fail. So we're totally dependent on an unrelated parameter that we need to measure. So the next thing that the product team did is let's measure motivation, the length of the emails, the sentiment of the emails, and so on and so forth. The process, how they're running their sales process, the quality of their leads, what are they coming from, which drove a whole thinking process around what we call sales productivity workshops, where we are checking with our customers the quality of their leads and saying those leads are worthless and those leads are amazing. Do more events, bring more leads from events. So it's a very deep process that we went through, and I'm sharing it because I think that's the way customer success leaders should think about it. Leading the company to a place where their customers is truly successful in the context of using their product, and not vice versa. So just to give you an idea what it resulted in, a full model has nothing to do with Base. A full model of sales. What is sales? Okay, so we went and did research and read everything about, every book out there about sales. And we said, okay, sales in Base is a factory of leads coming in. So I won't take you through it, but it's just the leads number, the percentage of leads worked, times the opportunities worked, the win ratio times the average deal size equals your revenue. And we've used that model, and this is how I measure my customers today, not adoption. It's like, where are you leaking revenue? And they're blown away. Every time we're doing the first QBR, what we call sales productivity workshop, it's like, I was expecting you to tell me who's using the system or not, and you're telling me where I'm leaking money. This is phenomenal. Never going to leave you, right? So this is the level that we went through. Things like, where are you in the hierarchy of excellence in sales? And I'm not shying away from saying, hey, dude, you're like level 1. You have no process whatsoever. There's no way you're going to be successful. It doesn't matter if it's Base, Salesforce, whatever you want to use. It's useless. You don't have a consistent sales process. And okay, let's go to next quarter. Hopefully you're going to be in level number 2, which is you have adoption, you have data. And then we're going to check if your data is consistent, right? Are 75% of your team is using Base? Is it meaningful? Get it all the way to full predictability, and suddenly it becomes their own personal process that they see themselves going through rather than using a tool. Our customer success managers are becoming consultants that our customers are working with to become better as leaders, and of course, from a performance perspective, increasing their sales. So this idea of an external customer success metric is super powerful. I'm not hearing about it enough. Don't measure customer success from your perspective. It means nothing to your customer. Adoption, who cares, right? Do you really think that the VP sales, or at least in Base, is measuring their success with Base? Or do they even know what their adoption level is? They can tell you it's okay, or it can be better, but they're really looking at this. How much am I selling? What is my conversion rate? So we're using external customer success metrics. I call them external because they're our customers, rather than internal. Those are leading indicators. The customer success metrics that we're using are lagging. You have to track both. Third principle, what do you do when you start building? Start with values. I think I heard a lot about it. Customer success is a very value-driven practice. Your team really needs to understand what you're doing, why you're doing this, why your company is the best company in the world, it's going to change the world for the better. Totally invest in that. Design for customer experience. Own the complexity. Don't attempt to show complexity to your customers. One focal point. Right? All the complexity is internal. They don't care who's your salesperson, who's your customer success, who's the implementer, who's support, and so on and so forth. It takes a lot. Kind of the Apple mentality, one button, right? So a lot goes into that design. Specialize early. A lot of people are asking me, okay, so when did you split to onboarding and ongoing customer success? as early as possible. If you specialize, you have 3 people, have 1 do ongoing, 2 doing onboarding. Right? Why? Because they will challenge you to develop that practice faster. You will understand their metrics, and you'll specialize faster. So one thing I did wrong, we waited till we were like 8 people to create the first ongoing customer success, and it cost us in like a year of expansion. Right now, our expansion is going through the roof just because people do that all day long. Measurable, repeatable process, and don't automate before it is stable. A lot of people is like, yeah, let's do this, and then automate, and bring all those tools to automate it. Don't, wait for it to stabilize. Change it 7 times. It works, it makes sense to you, automate that. Because we're focusing a lot of automation and not the processes themselves. To give you an idea, we started with the idea of how we're going to go through in customer success, how we're going to process. So defining the stages, the incoming, the prioritization process, the research that this customer success manager needs to do, then going to making contact. And every box here has its own process under this. What is the outcome of the reach out? Is it expansion? Is it have issues, gaps, or is it an immediate churn? So color code everything, and then going back to that happy no action needed green bucket, or the no response bucket. And what happens if they reach out back to you? And then you realize something I didn't think about. It's like some of them actually reach out to you. So if I did capacity planning for the CS, right, or CSM, suddenly they're overwhelmed because some customers are calling them and they were not as part of the I don't know, 12% of customers they need to reach out to this week. So lay out a process, let it run for a while, tweak it. There's a lot of numbers. I'm very I call it data informed, not data driven, because I'm not driven by numbers, I'm informed by numbers. But again, if you have any questions later on numbers and how you do that, there's a lot of engineering behind that. A 4th step, because we're running out of time, measure like a hawk all the time. That's reality. No data, no reality. You're floating somewhere with all kinds of assumptions. I was guilty of making a lot of assumptions that ended up not being true when you measure in scale. So be very data informed and start simple with high quality data. Don't go after like 50 metrics, take one. But make sure that the data you're looking at is super accurate. Nobody can challenge you on that. And then move to the second. Data is very confusing. It can be super confusing if you're not asking the right question and you're bringing the right data with the right cohort. And cohort analysis, by the way, go learn it, because cohort analysis is everything. If you measure things not by cohort, you're doing something wrong. So I think I wrote it, measuring cohorts, right? Segment by what matters. ACV, MRR, it's not essential to the way your customers are using your product. So don't segment them by MRR. Segment them by the size, by their type, their industry, something that really segments them, right? Because then you'll be confused. You'll say, okay, the $2,000 MRR is way more important and it needs that versus the 500, and it's actually, in reality, it's the opposite, because the 500 is way more complex than the 2,000. So invest time in thinking about what are the segments. Make it very personal. So from day one, make the metrics count all the way down to the CSM and make it visible to them and measure them by it. And so we have dashboards on Tableau running on big screens where they can see how their portfolio is performing this week. And make it visual, like I said, hire customer success data analyst, hire somebody that can really, so let me explain what it is. This is the cohort of January 2014. This is the cohort of October 15, right? And you see how much money we lost or gained every month from that cohort. One visual is like, oh my God, I have a problem in the first 2-3 months, right? And if I'm going over the first 2-3 months, then they're basically okay. So visualization is critical. Tableau experts, find one. Number 5, engaging with customers. I've read it. It's not mine, 5 badges a month rule. If you're not collecting 5 customer badges a month, you're not talking to them enough, so try to do that. It's kind of a 1 a week plus, so you travel a lot. Discuss your ideas with customers. Be very open and share what you're thinking, because they will you'll see that there's a disconnect between the language you're using and what they're. It's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. And you'll realize later on that you have to make sure that everything you're talking about internally has to matter externally. And that's really hard, right? Because the motivation internally sometimes don't align with the external work. So you want to talk about something, they don't want to talk about that thing. They want to talk about the bug that really is on their mind. Work slower and deeper. A lot of customer success managers that I've seen is like, yeah, I got like 7,000 customers and I need to take care of. No, you don't have to take care of 7,000 customers. Not all of them really matter to your business. So if you choose to segment them in a specific way and you say that segment is really what matters, focus on that segment, go deep, right? And make sure that once you're done, it's in a much better place. And don't try to take care of all of your customers' base all the time. It's just very frustrating. Fight the internal fights. We've heard it. Recruit other departments and fight with product when it matters. Fight with marketing and sales when it matters. And it's all about customer experience, right? They don't care about what's happening internally. So even if the sales really want to be engaged and get credit for that big expansion, fight the internal fight. I call it walking your customer's shoes. We actually did that. We asked customers for their shoes. It's kind of funny, but we gave them an Amazon card and asked them, because it's a lot about the culture. It goes back to my first point. It's a value-driven business. You really need to do that. So next step, we're going to take pictures of our employees. It's going to be kind of interesting, but walking in our customers' shoes. So do that and make sure that you engage a lot. There's a sixth one, which is don't do weed. And it stands for what everybody else does, right? I think a lot of customer success managers are trying to do what everybody else does, which is how do you measure, how do you find your own way? Because your business is very different. There's no other business like yours, and there's no other success like yours. And that's what I found. A lot of the things I've heard, it's like I'm going to do the opposite of what I've heard. So that's basically what I had to say. I know it's very high level. Thanks.